Hey, well wishes and good harvest, fellas. I presume yourself and your dear and near are in fine weather. It's at temperature to the restoration back with the shared ecstasy for my 85th video on annual of publication on YouTube today, 28th September 2020. Topic for discussion today is review of David A. Kolb's Experiential Learning, also known as Experiential Education concepts. Learning is a process of acquiring new understanding, knowledge, behavior, skills, values, attitudes, and preferences. The ability to learn is possessed by humans, animals, and some nations. There is also evidence for some kind of learning in some plants. Some learning is immediate, induced by a single event, but such skill and knowledge accumulate from repeated experiences. The changes induced by learning often last a lifetime, and it is hard to distinguish learned material that seems to be lost from that which cannot be retrieved. Human learning starts at birth and continues until death as a consequence of ongoing interactions between people and the environment. The nature and process involved in learning are studied in many fields, including educational psychology, neuropsychology, experimental psychology, and pedagogy. Research in such fields has led to the identification of various sorts of learning. For example, learning may occur as a result of habituation or classical conditioning, operant conditioning, or as a result of more complex activities such as play, seen only in relatively intelligent animals. Learning may occur consciously or without conscious awareness. Learning that an aversive event can't be avoided or escape may result in a condition called learned helplessness. There is evidence for human behavioral learning prenatally, in which habituation has been observed as early as 32 weeks into gestation, including that the central nervous system is sufficiently developed and primed for learning and memory to occur very early on in development. Play has been approached by several theorists as the first form of learning. Children experiment with the world, learn the rules, and learn to interact with play. Lev Vygotsky agrees that play is pivotal for children's development since they make meaning of the environment through playing educational games. For Vygotsky, however, play is the first form of learning language and communication at the stage where a child begins to understand rules and symbols. Non-associative learning refers to a relatively permanent change in the strength of response to a single stimulus due to repeated exposure to the stimulus. This definition exempts the changes caused by sensory adaptation, fatigue, or injury. Non-associative learning can be divided into habituation and sensitization. Habituation is an example of non-associative learning in which one or more components of an innate response to a stimulus diminishes when the stimulus is repeated. Thus, habituation must be distinguished from extinction, which is an associative process. Sensitization is an example of non-associative learning in which the progressive amplification of a response follows repeated administrations of a stimulus. This is based on the notion that the defensive reflexes to a stimulus, such as withdrawal or escape, become stronger after the exposure to a different harmful or threatening stimulus. Active learning occurs when a person takes control of his or her learning experience. Since understanding information is a key aspect of learning, it is important for learners to recognize that what they understand, what they do not. By doing so, they can monitor their own mastery of subjects. Active learning encourages learners to have an internal dialogue in which they verbalize understandings. This and other metacognitive strategies can be taught to a child over time. Studies within metacognition have proven the value in active learning, claiming that the learning is usually at a stronger level as a result of metacognition. As a result, in addition, learners have more incentive to learn when they have control over not only how they learn but also what they learn. Active learning is a key characteristic of student-centered learning. Conversely, passive learning and direct instruction are characteristics of teacher-centered learning or traditional education. Associative learning is a process by which a person or animal learns an association between two stimuli or events. In classical conditioning, previously neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with a reflex, eliciting the stimulus until eventually the neutral stimulus elicits a response on its own. In operant conditioning, Behavior that is reinforced or punished in the presence of a stimulus becomes more or less likely to occur in the presence of the stimulus. In operant conditioning, a reinforcement by reward or instead of punishment is given after a given behavior, changing the frequency and or form of the behavior. Stimuli present when the behavior consequences occurs come to control these behavior modifications. The typical paradigm for classical conditioning involves repeatedly pairing an unconditioned stimulus with another previously neutral stimulus. Following conditioning, response occurs both to the unconditioned stimulus and to the other unrelated stimulus, now referred to as a conditioned stimulus. The response of the conditioned stimulus is termed as conditioned response. Observational learning is learning that occurs through observing the behavior of others. It's a form of social learning which takes various forms based on various processes. In humans, this form of learning seems not only to not need reinforcement occur, but instead requires a social model such as a parent, sibling, friend, or teacher with the surroundings. Imprinting is a kind of learning occurring at a particular life stage that is rapid and apparently independent of the consequences of behavior. In Fulicial imprinting, animals, particularly birds, form an association with other individual or in some cases an object that they respond to as they would play a parent. Play generally describes behavior with no particular end in itself, but that improves performance in similar future situations. This is seen in a wide variety of vertebrates besides humans, but is mostly limited to mammals and birds. Play, as it pertains to humans as a form of learning, is central to a child's learning and development. Through play, children learn social skills such as sharing and collaboration. Children develop emotional skills such as learning to deal with the emotion of anger through play activities. The form of learning, play, also facilitates development of thinking and language skills in children. There are 5 types of play. Sensorimeter play, also known as functional play, characterized by the repetition of an activity. Role play occurs starting at the age of 3. Rule-based play, where authoritative prescribed codes of conduct are primary. Construction play involves experimentation and building. Movement play, also known as physical play. Culturalization is a process by which people learn values and behaviors that are repetitive, appropriate, or necessary in their surrounding culture. Parents, other adults, and peers shape the individual's understanding of these values. If successful, enculturation results in competence in the language, values, and rituals of the culture. Thus, it is different from acculturation, acculturation, where a person adopts the values and societal rules of a culture different from their native one. Episodic learning is a change in behavior that occurs as a result of an event. Okay? For example, a fear of dogs that follows being bitten by a dog is episodic learning. Episodic learning is so named because events are recorded in the episodic memory, which is one of the 3 forms of explicit learning and retrieval, along with perceptual memory and semantic memory. Episodic memory remembers events and history that are embedded in experience, and this is distinguished from semantic memory, which attempts to extract facts out of their experiential nature, context, or as some describe, a timeless organization of knowledge. Multimedia learning is where a person uses both auditory and visual stimuli to learn information. This type of learning relies on dual coding theory. Electronic learning or e-learning is computer-enhanced learning. A specific and always more diffused e-learning is mobile learning, M-learning, which uses different mobile telecommunication equipment such as cellular phones. When a learner interacts with the e-learning equipment environment, it is called augmented learning. Rote learning is memorizing information so that it can be recalled by a learner exactly the way it was read or heard. The major technique used for rote learning is learning by repetition based on the idea that a learner can recall the material exactly, but not its meaning, if the information is repeatedly processed. Rote learning is used in diverse areas from mathematics to music and religion. Although it has been criticized by some educators, rote learning is a necessary precursor to meaningful learning. Meaningful learning is a concept that learned knowledge, example, a fact is fully understood to the extent that it relates to other knowledge. To this end, meaningful learning contrasts with rote learning in which information is acquired without regard to understanding. Meaningful learning, on the other hand, implies there is a comprehensive knowledge of the context of the facts learned. Evidence-based learning is the use of evidence from well-designed scientific studies to accelerate learning. Evidence-based learning methods such as spaced repetition can increase the rate at which the student learns. Formal learning is learning that takes place within a teacher-student relationship, such as in a school system. The term formal learning has nothing to do with the formality of the learning, but rather the way it is directed and organized. In formal learning, the learning or training departments set out the goals and objectives of the learning. Non-formal learning is organized learning outside the formal learning system. For example, learning by coming together with the people with similar interests and exchanging viewpoints in clubs or in youth organizations workshops. Informal learning is less structured than non-formal one. It may occur through the experience of day-to-day situations. It is learning from life during a meal at a table with the parents, play, exploring, etc. The educational system may use a combination of formal, informal, and non-formal learning methods. Tangential learning is a process by which people self-educate if a topic is exposed to them in a context that they already enjoy. Dialogic learning is a type of learning based on dialogue. Incidental, incidental teaching learning is Incidental teaching learning is not planned by the instructor or the student. It may occur as a byproduct of another activity, an experience, observation, self-reflection, reflection, interaction, unique event, or common routine task. This learning happens in addition to or apart from the instructor's plans and the student's expectations. Incidental learning is an occurrence that it is not generally accounted for using the traditional methods of instructional objectives and outcomes assessment. But this type of learning occurs in part as a product of social interaction and active involvement in both online and on-site courses. Benjamin Bloom has suggested three domains of learning: cognitive, to recall, calculate, discuss, analyze, problem solve, etc. Psychomotor, to dance, swim, ski, dive, drive a car, ride a bike, etc. Affective, to like something or someone, love, appreciate, fear, hate, worship, etc. These domains are not mutually exclusive. Transfer of learning is the application of skill, knowledge, or understanding to resolve a novel problem or situation that happens when certain conditions are fulfilled. Factors affecting learning can be grouped under external factors and internal factors. External factors are heredity, status of students, physical environment. Internal factors are goals or purposes, motivational behavior, interest, attention, drill or practice, fatigue, aptitude, attitude, emotional conditions, speed, accuracy, and retention, learning activities, testing, and guidance. The underlying molecular basis of learning appears to be dynamic changes in gene expression occurring in brain neurons that are introduced by epigenetic mechanisms. Epigenetic regulation or gene expression involves of gene expression most notably chemical modification of DNA or DNA-associated histone proteins. These chemical modifications can cause long-lasting changes in gene expression. Epigenetic mechanisms involved in learning include the methylation and demethylation of neuronal DNA, as well as methylation, acetylation, and de-acetylation of neuronal histone proteins. During learning, information processing in the brain involves induction of oxidative modification in neuronal DNA, followed by the employment of DNA repair process that introduce epigenetic alterations. In particular, epigenetic. In particular, the DNA repair process of non-homologous end joining and base excision repair are employed in learning and memory formation. Machine learning, a branch of artificial intelligence, concerns the construction and study of systems that can learn from data. For example, a machine learning system could be trained on email messages to learn to distinguish between spam and non-spam messages. Experiential learning, EXL shortly, is a process of learning through experience and is more specifically defined as learning through reflection and doing. Hands-on learning can be a form of experiential learning, but does not necessarily involve students reflecting on the product. Experiential learning is distinct from rote or didactic learning, in which the learner plays a comparatively passive role. It is reflected to but not synonymous with other forms of active learning such as action learning, adventure learning, free choice learning, cooperative learning, service learning, and situational learning. Experiential learning is often used synonymously with the term experiential education, but while experiential education is a broader philosophy of education, experiential learning considers an individual learning process as such compared to experiential education. Experiential learning is concerned with the more concrete issues related to the learner and the learning context. The general concept of learning through experience is ancient. Around 350 BCE, Aristotle wrote in the Mnemomachine Ethics, for the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. But as an articulated educational approach, experiential learning is of much more recent vintage. Beginning in the 1970s, David A. Kolb helped develop the modern theory of experiential learning, drawing heavily on the work of John Dewey, Kurt Lewin, and Jean Piaget. Experiential learning has significant teaching advantages. Peter Senge, author of the fifth discipline in 1990, states that teaching is of utmost importance to motivate people. Learning only has good effects when learners have the desire to absorb the knowledge. Therefore, experiential learning requires a showing of directions for learners. Experiential learning entails a hands-on approach to learning that moves away from just the teacher at the front of the room imparting and transferring the knowledge to students. It makes learning an experience that moves beyond the classroom and tries to bring a more involved way of learning. Experiential learning focuses on the learning process of the individual. An example of experiential learning is going to the zoo and learning through observation and interaction with the zoo environment as opposed to reading about animals from a book. Thus, one makes discoveries and experiments with the knowledge firsthand instead of hearing or reading about others' experiences. Likewise, in business school, internship and job shadowing opportunities in a student's field of interest can provide valuable experiential learning which contributes significantly to the student's overall understanding of the real world environment. Experiential learning can exist without a teacher and relate solely to the meaning-making process of the individual's direct experience. However, through the gaining of knowledge is an inherent process that occurs naturally, a genuine learning experience requires certain elements. According to Kolb, knowledge is continuously gained through both personal and environmental experiences. Kolb states that in order to gain genuine knowledge from an experience, the learner must have four abilities. The learner must be willing to be actively involved in the experience. The learner must be able to reflect on the experience. The learner must possess and use analytical skills to conceptualize the experience. The learner must possess decision-making and problem-solving skills in order to use the new ideas gained from the experience. Experiential learning requires self-initiative, an intention to learn, and an active phase of learning. Kolb's cycle of experiential learning can be used as a framework for considering the different stages involved. Jennifer A. Moon has elaborated on this cycle to argue that experiential learning is most effective when it involves a reflective learning phase. A phase of learning occurs from the resulting from the actions inherent to experiential learning. And a further phase of learning from feedback. This process of learning can result in changes in judgment, feeling, or skills for the individual and can provide direction for the making of judgments as a guide to choice and action. Most educators understand the important role experience plays in the learning process. The role of emotion and feelings in learning from experience has been recognized as an important part of experiential learning. While those factors may improve the likelihood of experiential learning occurring, it can occur without them. Rather, what is vital in experiential learning is that the individual is encouraged to directly involve themselves in the experience and then to reflect on their experience using analytical skills in order that they gain a better understanding of what the new knowledge to retain the information for a longer time. Reflection is a crucial part of the experiential learning process, and like experiential learning itself, can be facilitated or independent. UE wrote that successive portions of reflective to grow out of one another and support one another, creating a scaffold for further learning and allowing for further experiences and reflection. This reinforces the fact that experiential learning and reflective learning are iterative process. The learning builds and develops with further reflection and experience. Facilitation of experiential learning and reflection is challenging, but a skilled facilitator asking the right questions and guiding reflective conversation before, during, and after an experience can help open a gateway to powerful new thinking and learning. Jacobson and Ruddy, building on Kolb's four-stage experiential learning model, and Pfeiffer and Jones' five-stage experiential learning cycle, took these theoretical frameworks and created a simple practical questioning model for facilitators to use in promoting critical experience, critical reflection in experiential learning. Yeah, we have to question us. The five questions model is as follows. Did you notice? Why did that happen? Does that happen in life? What does that happen? Why does that happen? How can you use that? Even kids learn a lot of things through whys. Why, when, what, where, how. H also. Okay, H and W. These questions are posed by the facilitator after an experience and gradually lead the group towards a critical reflection on their experience and an understanding of how they can apply that learning to their own life. As higher education continues to adapt to new expectations from students, the experiential learning in business and accounting programs has become more important. Learning styles also impact business education in the classroom. Kolb questions four learning styles: diverger, assimilator, accommodator, and converger. Adopt the experiential learning model using the four experiential learning stages to cover four quadrants, one for each learning style. An individual's dominant learning style can be identified by taking Kolb's learning style inventory, LSI. Professional education applications, also known as management training or organizational development, apply experiential learning technique in training employees at all levels within the business and professional environment. Interactive role-play based customer service training is often used in large retail chains. Training board games simulating business and professional situations such as the beer distribution game used to teach supply chain management, or the Friday night as the AR game used to teach systems hiding, systems thinking are used in business training efforts. The experiential business learning is a process of learning and developing business skills through the medium of shared experience. The main point of difference between this and academic learning is a more real life experience for the recipient. Experiential learning is most easily compared with academic learning, the process of acquiring information through the study of a subject without the necessity of a direct experience. While the dimensions of experiential learning are analysis, initiative, and immersion, the dimensions of academic learning are constructive learning and reproductive learning. Though both methods aim to instill new knowledge in the learner, academic learning does so through more abstract classroom-based techniques, whereas experiential learning actively involves a learner in a concrete experience. Benefits of experiential learning are experience real world. For example, students who major in chemistry may have chances to interact with the chemical environment. Learners who have a desire to become business people will have the opportunity to experience and manage a push. Improved on the job for performance. For example, municipal bus drivers trained by a high fidelity simulation training instead of just classroom training showed significant decreases in accidents and fuel consumption. The simulation is a tool used for training so many fields like flight operation, ship steering of ship, how to deal with accidents, how to deal with fire, okay, whatever. Opportunities for creativity. There is always more than one solution for a problem in the real world. It is called divergent thinking, lateral thinking. Students will have a better chance to learn that lesson when they get to interact with real life experiences. Experiential learning stems from a number of pedagogical theories, but to put it very simply, sometimes the best way to learn is through experience. Whether you are a tutor, home, or school instructor, or full-time teacher for students of any age, you can use experiential learning to improve the educational environment for your students. The experiential learning might mean doing group activities, or taking a field trip. Whatever method you choose, experiential learning is a great teaching technique because it allows your students to see how that learning applies to life outside the classroom. Rote learning is not of use, any use. I'm sorry to say, in most of the schools, rote learning is the only method practiced. Method on incorporating simple experiential activities in classes. Determine what goals the students need to meet. Choose an activity that meets. This is method one. Choose an activity that helps meet these goals. Give your students a project calendar. Ask students to reflect on the activity. Apply the activity directly to your lesson. Reinforce what was learned in the activity. Method two, utilizing advanced project-based learning. Create a project that teaches core principles. Provide specific standards for success. Analyze what students learn. Reflect on the lessons of teamwork. Provide an opportunity for your students to reflect on the process. Method three, taking education out of class. Make a museum or zoo your classroom. Assign a trip to the theater. Visit nearby shops, restaurants, or parks. Require internships or job shadowing. Chapman et al. Have provided a list of characteristics that should be present in order to define an activity as or method as experiential. These characteristics include mixture of content and process. There should be a balance between the experiential activities and the underlying content or theory. Absence of excessive judgment. The instructor must create a safe space for students to work through their own process of self-discovery. Engagement or in purposeful endeavors. In experiential learning, the learner is a self-teacher, therefore must be meaning for the student in the learning. The learning activities must be personally relevant to the student, encouraging the big picture perspective. Experiential activities must allow the students to make connections between the learning they are doing and the work. Activities should build in students the ability to see relationships in more complex systems and find a way to work within them. The role of reflection. Students should be able to reflect on their own learning, bringing the theory to life and gaining insight into themselves and the interactions with the world. Creating emotional investment. Students must be fully immersed in the experience, not merely doing what they feel is required of them. The process needs to engage the learner to a point where what is being learned and experienced strikes a critical central chord within the learner. The re-examination of values. By working within a space that has been made safe for self-exploration, students can begin to analyze and even after alter their own values. The presence of meaningful relationships. One part of getting students to see their learning in the context of the whole world is to start by showing the relationships between learner to self, learner to teacher, and learner to learning environment. Learning outside one's perceived comfort zones. Learning is enhanced when students are given the opportunity to operate outside of their own perceived comfort zones. This does not refer just to physical environment, but also to the social environment. This could include, for instance, being accountable for one's actions and owning the consequences. Experiential learning can also be defined by the qualities it imparts on its learners. Successful experiential learners have a willingness to reorder or alter the conception of a topic. They can reason for themselves and are able to successfully explain their question. They have clarity of purpose with the tasks they undertake and the self-management skills necessary to work successfully both alone and in a group. The experiential learners are aware of the rules governing the discipline or mode of operation, but are also open-minded and able to work with the people with the different views. Finally, experiential learners are in control of their voice. They can identify the role of emotion in their learning as well as reflect on how they have come to the new knowledge. The first and foremost beneficiary of experiential learning is the student. Depending on the learner population, the benefits of experiential learning can increase learner groups that have been shown to benefit from experiential learning. Experiential learning can increase. Learner groups that have been shown to benefit from experiential learning include the mature learner who has been long removed from the traditional classrooms and needs a motivation of contextual learning or to get them back into the swing of academia. The learner who needs to personally experience the value of subject in order to be motivated to learn. The learner who has trouble learning within the formal classroom needs an alternate learning method in order to succeed. Any learner who can benefit from having hands-on examples to bolster the traditional learning. Experiential learning can be divided into two major categories: field-based experience and classroom-based learning. Field-based learning is the oldest, most established form of experiential learning, having been integrated into higher education in the 1930s. Field-based experiential learning includes internships, practicums, cooperative education, and service learning. Classroom-based experiential learning can take a multitude of forms, including role-playing games, case studies, simulations, presentations, and various types of group work. The experiential learning in the classroom has been growing in breadth and depth. Since reflection is such a critical component of a successful experiential learning process, it is imperative that students understand exactly what reflection is and how to use the process to deepen their learning. To do so, Moon has articulated a two-stage process for training students in reflection. The first stage is called presenting reflection. In this stage, students are provided with examples of reflective writing and are led through a discussion and some small exercises and get them accustomed to the concept and methodology of reflection. The second stage works to deepen the students' understanding of reflection, moving from basic to more complex forms. Assessment is an integral part of the experiential learning process. It provides a basis for participants and instructors alike to confirm and reflect on the learning and growth that is occurring. Further, proper assessment methods engender a reflective process that ensures continued growth long after specific learning opportunities have been completed. Without the appropriate assessment tools, such as a self-assessment, the educator might not ever realize that significant learning has occurred. Therefore, classroom educators should search for assessment techniques that measure more than just the ability to remember information. The assessment of experiential activities presents a unique problem to instructors because in experiential activities, the means are as important as the ends. It is important to look at assessment as more than outcome measurement. While outcomes are important to measure, they reflect the end product of assessment, not a complete assessment cycle. It is therefore necessary to devise unique assessment methods to measure success in both the process and the product. Each area requires separate learning outcomes and criteria. Another difficulty in developing assessments has to do with the variability of experiential activities. Because students are working on different projects or participating in different external activities, they can't all be expected to learn exactly the same things, and each student may take away something different from the experience. Beyond the variability of activities, there is also the variability amongst the different students. In experiential learning, these two types of variables are often uncontrollable and thus have to be accounted for when developing assessment methods. Ebert and Sipka have broken these confounding variables down into three areas based on what parts of the experiential learning cycle they affect. Confounding variables are either precursors or concomitant or post experience. Precursor variables exert their influence prior to the beginning of an experiential education experience. They are the antecedents that an individual brings into the experience. These variables include prior knowledge and experience. Participants with more or less past background and knowledge have both the ability to learn and benefit from different lessons from the experience. Demographics, the age, sex, and socioeconomic status of students have an impact on what students learn. Pre-experience anxiety, emotions, motivations, and expectations. These three items can influence the participants' readiness to learn, engage in, and benefit from the experience. Self-selection into a specific program or experience. The various reasons for why each student has chosen to participate in an experiential learning activity and create fundamentally different cohorts every time the program is run. The inherent differences between groups or individuals are often difficult to isolate from the variance between experiential education experiences. Concomitant variables often arise during an experiential education experience and influence outcomes during or immediately after that experience. These variables include course specific. This refers to the structure of the program, including the length, the specific activities, and the influence of the instructors, group characteristics, the attributes of and characteristics of the individual students make each group different. This impacts both the individual experiences as well as the experience of the cohort. Situational impacts. These specific non-structured or unanticipated events can have both a positive and negative effect on learning. Front loading for evaluation. The type of experiential bias in which the instructors or students consciously or unconsciously influence the student results because of the evaluation process. For instance, instructors might alter the experience to match the findings they hope to see. Students might, through a pretest, be predisposed to learning certain course outcomes. Post-experience variables exert the influence after the completion of an experiential education activity. These variables include social desirability or self-deception, positivity in which students respond to an evaluation survey with what they think instructors want to hear rather than what they really feel. Post-experience euphoria, in which a short-term feeling of excitement and accomplishment obscures the true feelings of the participant. Post-experience adjustment or re-entry issues refers to the time that students need to adjust back to normal life after they complete their experiential activity. Collecting data during this period may not reflect how the student will feel after they get some distance from the program. Response shift bias can occur when the testing or measurement of a self-perception variable occurs at different times and the participant's understanding of the variable changes over this time period. For instance, a student may, through the learning they experience over the course of the program, change their view of what constitutes productive teamwork skills. And thus the self-assessment at the beginning of the program cannot be accurately compared to the self-assessment after the program, as these assessments should be measuring different things. Effective assessment methods must be able to take these variables into account and be able to both separate perceived learning and genuine learning. As well as capture accurate levels of growth and change in students. Experiential learning is a must for professionals like engineers, medical doctors, lawyers, teachers, etc. Just imagine an engineer designing a dam without any experience, a medical doctor performing a surgery without any practical exposure or training, lawyer arguing a case in court without any field experience, a teacher teaching a subject without any practical experience. All of you realize the disastrous consequences. So in professional programs, a minimum of one project work is mandated in the curriculum, and all students should apply the theoretical knowledge in real life, of course, with the guidance of teachers. And sometimes from industry experts too, and acquire hands-on expertise in application. Experience is the best teacher. There is a vast gap between theory and practice. This can be bridged through application in real life under the supervision of experts in the domain. In developed countries, professional certification is a must to practice in the field. This is besides academic qualification. In law and accounts field, one has to work with senior in the field for some period as mandated by the professional bodies, and only after successful completion they are entitled to practice on their own. In medical field, home house urgency is mandatory. Even good academicians fail miserably when it comes to application, since it's a special aptitude, talent, or skill that one should acquire through hands-on experience. In developing and underdeveloped countries, so many quacks operate as professionals: mechanics, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, painters, medical doctors, architects, teachers, physiotherapists, without even the basic academic qualifications. These are hard to weed out unless otherwise the punishment is stringent. Corruption is the root cause of all evil. Discipline should be nurtured right from childhood. If the society is disciplined, there is no necessity for law enforcement. Okay, as I said before, rote learning should be completely eliminated from education system. The focus should be on application. That is how CBSE, ICSE curriculum is designed in India, whereas state board and metric, it's all based on rote learning, memorization and repetition. I would say it is like eating, vomiting, or excreting and forgetting. Debates, discussion, and open-ended topics like this can go on forever. Anyhow, let me pull the plug here. Anyhow, we'll meet again real soon with another interesting topic. Some of the statements used expressed are solely mine based on limited knowledge gained over 6 decades of versatile experience. Always watch these videos with closed caption, subtitles for absolute 100% comprehension and explaining sincere recommendation. Zillion times so far. I know I rushed through to complete the presentation within 20 minutes max, which is a norm that I had set myself to retain the viewer's attention. I know nowadays I take almost more than double the time since I make honest attempts to cover the selected topic more elaborately, including so many intricate fine details regarding referring a wide variety of sources, in particular Wikipedia quite extensively, besides articles and books published recently. Besides, of course, I sprinkle my own salt and pepper and season it with my personal experiences so far in my life and also intuition. Stay at home as much as possible to maintain social distancing attributed to pandemic, novel COVID-19, and prolong your lifespan. Lead a healthy life. God alone can put a stop to natural and unnatural events, maybe bio-war and cyber war events like pandemics, which may lead to apocalypse and extinction of all sentient species on Earth for no fault of theirs. Rest in peace and harmony.